Hi, this is Claudio Maccone with the IAEA, and I would like to tell you about the Moon Farside Protection and astronomy protection. These are urgent matters, and we suggest a United Nations Farside Science Treaty. So, what is this Farside Science UN Treaty about? We suggest this treaty asking for all spacefaring countries to comply with a list of accepted frequencies and forbidden frequencies for their spacecraft whenever they fly above the far side. We plan to submit this treaty proposal to the United Nations COPUOS next year, 2024. But these matters are legally uncertain. So negotiations are urgent among scientists and space politicians. Let me just briefly tell you about the history of these matters. As early as 1974, the first ideas about protecting a radio-quiet far side by ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, were put forward. Essentially, the idea proposed by ITU is that if you consider a telecommunication satellite in orbit around the Earth, 100,000 kilometers above the surface of the Earth, then the radiation emitted by this satellite can be drawn so that they are grazing the surface of the Moon. And on the other side of the Moon, there is a quiet cone that is a portion of space that is not reached by the radiation emitted by the telecom satellite because the Moon shields the transmissions. And finally, this quiet cone ends up with the apex. Now, as you see, 100,000 kilometers orbit of the satellites around the Earth. This is the shielded zone of the Moon according to ITU definition. And the article of ITU about that is S, as in sun, 22. Later, on 10th June 2010, I presented the PAC, Protected Antipode Circle, at the United Nations COPUOS. What is that? Well, on the right you see a picture of the far side of the Moon, and if you consider two parallels, plus and minus 30 degrees in latitude, north and south, and the circle, the red circle tangent to both these parallels, that region inside the circle is what I call the PAC, Protected Antipode Circle. So the circle is precisely centered around the antipode, that is the point on the far side opposite to the Earth, and nearby there is a great crater called Daedalus, which is 80 kilometers inside, and I would suggest, and I did suggest at the United Nations, to use this crater as a place for future radio telescope in the far side of the Moon, because obviously this position is the most shielded position from the radiation coming from the Earth. So that was my proposal in 2010, but of course now we are living an evolving space competition. The moon rush started in 2018 by China essentially, and then all the other countries like USA, Russia, Japan, India, and Europe, and possibly more countries are interested in setting up spacecraft on the moon far side. China started in 2018 by virtue of the Chang'e 4 space mission launched in December 2018 and aims at the far side exploration. It landed inside the von Karman crater previously called IAU 434 crater, on the Moon Farside. You see in the picture, color picture, the Aitken Basin, which is a sort of part of the Farside below the average surface of the Moon. Now, politics and the creation of the protected antipode circle. The Outer Space Treaty was signed in 1967. It says that no country can colonize the Moon, planets, and asteroids for that country only. Back in 1967, however, it was hard to envisage a time when private investors could reach the Moon by virtue of their own technical and technological means. So no one really knows what will happen when some private investor lands on the Moon. The polluters don't say that, but practically it is as if they would say so. And the sentence that they would possibly say is, we have money and pollute as we please. So the question is, will private investors stay away from the protected antipode circle? Almost certainly not so. It is thus urgent to reach some kind of international agreement, and the Farside Science United Nations Treaty is just dealing with that. I repeat, we suggest a Farside Science Treaty asking for all spacefaring countries to comply with a list of accepted frequencies and forbidden frequencies for the spacecrafts when they fly above the far side of the Moon. We plan to submit this treaty proposal to the United Nations COPUOS by 2024. But again, these matters are legally uncertain, and so negotiations are urgent. I would like to stress this word, urgent, among scientists and space politicians before private investors reach the Moon and they spoil the radio quiet far side of the Moon. Thank you very much for your attention.